Week 17 of the fantasy football season. If you made the championship in your league, congratulations. But here's a few kickers I look to get on the wire this week. I'm recording this video. No one's been placed on the safety or protocol list here, and hopefully it stays that way. The first guy, Dustin Hopkins of the Los Angeles Chargers. Hopkins, he was a good pickup a few weeks ago after the Washington football team got rid of him for whatever reason. And that's definitely not a great idea now, looking at how many kickers they've had since they got rid of Hopkins early in the season. So the last few weeks here for Hopkins: Week 14 versus the Giants, 11. Week 15 versus Kansas City, 4. Week 16 at Houston, 12 fantasy points. And right here, Week 17, a pretty decent matchup versus Denver, which is a type of defense that bends but don't break most of the time here. And I think Hopkins, once again in this division matchup, could have a good ball game. And right now, if you need a kicker, he's available in 70% of fantasy leagues. The next kicker is Young Hoku of the Atlanta Falcons. Saku, he had a good ball game with 11 fantasy points in Week 16. And it was a great matchup versus the Lions, who give up the most fantasy points to kickers on the season. So right now, Ku's available in 53% of fantasy leagues. The only thing with him is he hasn't had many opportunities this season like he did last year. This Falcon offense has been struggling most of the year here because he's still pretty accurate and pretty productive kicker that don't miss many field goals. So the last few weeks here for Ku: Week 14 at Carolina, 12. Week 15 at San Francisco, 7. And Week 16 versus Detroit, 11. So Week 17, a tough matchup, no doubt, at Buffalo. That gives up the fifth least amount of fantasy points to kickers on the season. But right here, I think he's going to still have some opportunities, is Ku, in this ball game. And right now, like I mentioned, he's one of the most accurate kickers in the league. And I look to give him an ad this week. The next guy is Michael Badgley of the Indianapolis Colts. So Badgley this season, he's been pretty much money for this Colt team, and fantasy owners who have him, even though he's available in 73% of fantasy leagues. The last few weeks here for Badgley: Week 13 at Houston, 6. Week 15 versus New England, 9. Week 16 at Arizona, 9. And right here, Week 17, a great matchup versus the Raiders that give up the 6 most fantasy points to kickers on the season. So right here, Badgley's with a great offense over there in Indianapolis. Good quarterback in Carson Wentz this season, and the best running back this season in Jonathan Taylor. So more opportunities. Once again, it's going to be for Badgley, in my opinion. Obviously, an indoor game versus Vegas here at home for the Colts. And this guy's floor is pretty much 6 or 7 points, with a ceiling being unlimited. So right here, once again, Badgley, I think, has a good ball game, and it's surprising to me he's still available in 73% of fantasy leagues. The next kicker I look to get is Randy Bullock of the Tennessee Titans. So Bullock's had a nice bounce-back season this year with the Titans. He's available in 90% of fantasy leagues. In the last few weeks here, he's been pretty consistent. Week 14 versus Jacksonville, 8. Week 15 at the Steelers, 6. Week 16 versus San Francisco, 9. And now Week 17, he's got a good matchup versus the Dolphins that give up the 4th most fantasy points to kickers on the season. Here's Bullock. And Bullock, he's in a pretty high-powered offense here with A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, even though he's been a bust this season, and a pretty decent quarterback in Ryan Tannehill. So right here, this Tennessee team, they've been putting up points most of the year until some of the injuries hit, but he's still getting opportunities, at least 2 or 3 opportunities a game is Bullock. And with a good matchup, like I mentioned, versus Miami in Week 17, I think he could have a decent ball game. And the 5th and final kicker I look to get on the wire this week, Evan McPherson of the Cincinnati Bengals. So I've spoken about McPherson a lot this year in his rookie year in the NFL. And this kid's got one of the best boots in all of pro football, and he's on one of the better offenses in the league as well here with the Bengals. The last few games here for McPherson: Week 14 versus San Francisco, 11. Week 15 at Denver, 12. And Week 16 versus Baltimore, 11. So right here, he's got a good matchup where it's versus a bend but don't break type of defense in Week 17 versus Kansas City. The Chiefs, their defense, no doubt about it, it's been one of the best defenses in the last month or 2 of the season here. But I still think he's going to get some opportunities. And this is going to be a big-time ball game in Week 17 with 2 great teams here going at it. Bengals, they have a great offense. Just their defense has been inconsistent this season. And obviously the Chiefs, they got off to the slow start, but they've been riding high the last 2 months of the season. So McPherson here, I think he could have another good ball game. And he's available, surprisingly, still in 72% of fantasy leagues. That's a few kickers I look to get on the wire here for Week 17 of the fantasy football season.